Welcome back to Half the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levy, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 247, Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes. And Shaq, it's going down this Saturday in H-Town, Houston, Texas. The longest reigning defending light heavyweight champion, the GOAT, Jon Jones, is taking on an undefeated challenger in Dominick Reyes this weekend.
Yeah, Houston's a city known for its great fights. There's been plenty of great moments from the UFC in Houston, and we know that a lot of people are probably most likely going to get knocked out or finished on this card. I'm assuming it's a Houston. You know that energy is going to be lit. So Jon Jones, the GOAT, facing this, up-and-comer Dominick Reyes, only a couple, 2 or 3 good wins. Ozdemir, OSP, and Chris Weidman. Let's see if he's the one.
Man, he says he's the one. He's referenced his athletic background more than once in the build-up to this fight. And with Jon Jones, a lot of the story's been that, his last few fights were against former middleweights, and now he's taking on not just a light heavyweight, Shaq, but a 6'5" light heavyweight in Dominick Reyes, who looked like all the talk so far. So now, huge step up in competition from Chris Weidman here to the GOAT, Jon Jones. Let's see if he rises to the occasion.
Yeah, I like the banter these two got going on. I like the little subtle comments between both. Jon saying Dominick is clueless and has no idea because, he's a big fish in a small pond out there in Cali. And Reyes is saying similar things, saying that, a lot of people at Jackson Wink been feeling left out, because the treatment Jon gets. But, hey, Jon Jones is the GOAT, so.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, man, like when you see the in-depth, this dude has a training partner / coach, just a staff member for every aspect of the game, man. I think the reason he's had such longevity is because when you see him on Fight Week, the guy's out here drilling the basics, and we know the basics are the key to being great at anything. If you watch any old Kobe videos, like that's what he said, you got to drill those basics. And you see my boy Jon Jones out there drilling basic arm bars with his jiu-jitsu coach. It doesn't seem like Reyes is getting that kind of one-on-one attention, so I'm very curious to see what happens when Reyes takes such a step up in competition here.
I disagree a little bit. He's got a team. That little Victorville, it's his team Reyes. So, I think he's got a team around him, just guys that we, don't know of. No Brandon Gibsons or Wink or Greg Jackson. So, I'm interested to see.
Yeah, for sure. Well, before we break down this card start to finish, got to let the fans know you can check out our bets at bestfightpicks.com right now. Use that promo code 2020 to save 20% off our VIPs, which is my bets and Shaq's bets combined in one package. But if you just want to deal with us individually, you can use my promo code Dan for 10% off, or you can use Shaq's promo code Shaq for 10% off, all lowercase there, bestfightpicks.com. Well, Shaq, let's break down this whole card start to finish because first up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Austin Lingo, he's 7-0, and Yuseff Zalal is 7-2. Currently, they got Austin Lingo minus 190, and the comeback on Yuseff Zalal is plus 165. So heavy action's been coming in on Yuseff Zalal. Interestingly enough, Austin Lingo actually opened minus 500 in Bet Online, but as you know, that might have been a little bit out there, but now it seems more appropriate. You got the Factory X product and Yuseff Zalal taking on Fortis MMA's own Austin Lingo. Which way you going?
Yeah, this is a great matchup, but you got two newcomers, both hungry, both from good camps. You got Lingo from Fortis, Zalal, he's from Factory X. So these guys are probably prepared to fight at a very high level for their debuts. Zalal, he's a very scrappy kid. He's actually lost 2 of his last 3, if I'm not mistaken. But hey, there were close decisions. He won the 3rd round in each of those fights. He just seems like he's a little green. I'm sure he'll get better along the way. It just seems that Austin Lingo, on the other hand, both guys, I don't want to say Zalal's fought better competition, but, Lingo was fighting cans up until, recently his last couple fights. But, hey, one thing about Lingo is he's got that KO power. He moves forward. He's very consistent, like most guys at Fortis. He just those basic combinations to get what he needs to be done, and that's knocking people out unconscious. Now, Zalal, he's a little flash here and there. He likes to talk in the cage. He's a very entertaining fighter. I just view Austin Lingo as the better fighter in every aspect. Just, I don't want to say slightly, but Zalal, we've seen him out-grappled at times. You've seen him overwhelmed with the pressure when he fought Mariscal and Matt Jones. He dropped rounds in those fights. He did win the 3rd round, so he possibly could be one of these comeback kids. But I just see Austin Lingo possibly doing what he always does, getting another victory with that consistent Fortis MMA pressure like I notice a lot of those guys have. Or if this goes 3 rounds, Zalal gives up takedowns in a lot of his fights, and he's been fighting these guys that I don't want to say aren't, they aren't on Austin Lingo's level in my opinion. They're grappling-based fighters for the most part. They're still, overwhelming him with punches at times. I think Zalal will have a bright future. He needs to drop the bantamweight. I think Lingo has a decent size advantage in this matchup, and I think he gets the win here in Texas, Houston, not far from home. I think he gets a knockout finish, so I'll go with Lingo.
Yeah, no, I think you said it right, man. This kid Zalal needs to drop down to 135 pounds. He said it himself, and interestingly enough, most of his fights have been at featherweight, and the times that he's lost fights, he seems to be very outsized. And he's one of these guys that if you show him too much respect, he'll start pointing down to the cage. He'll start throwing flying knees. He'll start getting off with the flash. And from a technical standpoint, I actually think Yuseff Zalal is pretty damn good. I mean, he's got kind of a complete game in a sense where he's got the calf kicks on the feet. I've seen him out grapple people. I've seen him take people's backs and choke them out. So it's one of those things where anytime he's fought someone that was more physical than him, that was willing to push that pace, not that he necessarily broke, but again, the size factor, he seemed like he was able to be bullied in that cage, and that's exactly what Austin Lingo is going to do to him on Saturday night, because Austin Lingo is one of these guys that, well, obviously, he's got devastating knockout power. He's got that one-hitter quitter, and this is something he's had ever since his amateur days. There's always been that thing with Austin Lingo in the pocket, in these exchanges, when he hits guys behind the ear, on the temple, wherever it may be, on the chin, they seem to wobble, and oftentimes they get knocked out. This has been going on for a long time. Now, the whole question is, how's his ground game? Well, the times I've seen him taken down, I saw the kid attacking off his back with submissions. I saw him scramble back up to his feet. So, in my opinion, it's not that there's necessarily a weakness on the ground for Austin Lingo. It's just more so that he gravitates towards that God-given knockout power that he brings to the table, man. So, I think he's going to go forward in this fight. I think he's going to throw some heavy bombs at Yuseff Zalal. And I'm very curious how Yusuf's going to react to these shots, man. So I'm going Austin Lingo to probably knock out Yuseff Zalal, but if it hits the scorecards, I think Austin Lingo gets it done as well. Now, next up in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Andre Ewell, he's 15-6, and Jonathan Martinez is 11-2. Currently, they got Andre Ewell -120, and Jonathan Martinez is +100. Well, Shaq, it opened -190, Andre Ewell. All the action has been coming in on Jonathan Martinez. And this kid Martinez, very, very talented. You think he's ready to come out here, get a 3-fight win streak, and show off all this potential people have been talking about.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see that all the action is on him. Ewell lost to Chito Vera's last fight by finish. I think he's, 2-2? Or 2-2 in the UFC. I mean, it was a very entertaining fighter. He's known for his striking. He's known for that left hand. Martinez, on the other hand, had that rough debut against Sukumtachi. Took that fight on less than a week's short notice, but he bounced back in a nice way. They gave him that nice little layup against Luigi Buren. They kind of gave him a mini Cheeto. I've called Martinez Little Cheeto in the past. He kind of reminds me of him, and just a much lesser developed version, but man, the improvements that he made from the Buren fight to the Pingwan fight was massive in my opinion, man. A lot of people won't know what they're watching in that fight. The first 2 rounds kind of, I don't want to say were uneventful, but it was each guy was very worried about each other's counters, and if you really watch what you're seeing, man, Martinez was picking him apart the whole time, setting him up with that left kick, and then eventually found the home for the knee and the knockout win. So I think Martinez at 25 years old is getting better at a very frequent weight. He's getting more comfortable in the octagon. And before the UFC, man, I watched a couple highlight tapes on this kid before the Sukumtachi fight. I was very impressed. I mean, we saw his fight with Matt Schnell back in the day where he got DQ'd. The kid's got a little Latin fire in him, 100%. Ull's a good striker. He can hit 100% with that left hand, but what else does he really have? He is experienced. But, he's kind of one of these fighters that I feel like he's an overrated striker, in my opinion. I think that I'm not saying he's a bad striker. I just think that, his left hands look really good when he's fighting, stationary Brazilians that don't move. Anderson Dos Santos and Renan Barão, 2 guys that, I mean, let's just be honest here, guys. In a couple months, Hennon's already gone. No offense to Anderson, beat Ricky Simon, but, he's probably not going to be here for much longer. So I think that Ewell is one of these guys that he gasses out in a lot of his fights. His footwork gets bad as the fights progress on. He starts dropping his hands. And, yes, he's lost to 2 top 15 guys, but, going into the fight where those guys viewed as top 15 guys, you know what I'm saying? Wood's not even top 15. But Vera, for example, he wasn't necessarily thought of a top 15 guy going into that fight. So I feel like this is a good spot for Martinez. It does kind of worry me that all the action is on him, but I think Ewell's very one-dimensional. I don't really think much has changed in his fighting style. I mean, look, the kid's definitely more experienced than Martinez, but not by much, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Martinez is going to come out here, get the win. I think that he's going to capitalize on some of those mistakes that Ewell makes striking with the angles the feints, and I just don't see him standing in front of him. I mean, let's be honest here. Anderson Dos Santos still had a lot of success in that fight, even though he's too stubborn in his ways. He won't move his head. He's what's the word I'm looking for? He's set on banging with Ewell, trying to prove that he's a tough Brazilian, which is, that's great and all. But I think that Martinez projects as the better fighter. Right now, is he the better fighter? I don't know. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the kid's getting better. So I think he's going to come in here, get a win in his hometown, Houston, Texas. And I'm going to say by third round submission.
Man, this is a really tough fight for me to call because obviously when you talk about the ceiling, this kid, Jonathan Martinez, he's been getting better every single fight, and I feel like he will play out to be the better fighter long term. It's just about where are they at right now. And Andre Ewell obviously is known for throwing that left hand, but I got to give the guy a lot of credit. He got embarrassed on the mat, not just against Nathaniel Wood, but in past fights, against Patrick Mix and all these other guys. And since that point, look, he's been putting in work in the gi. The guy got promoted to purple belt recently, so I got to give him a lot of credit for addressing his weakness, man. Much respect. And he's always going to be an exciting guy to watch. I really enjoy watching him fight. All 4 of his UFC fights have been awesome, so I'm an Andre Ewell fan. But with this kid Martinez, obviously the UFC debut didn't go his way against Sukumtat. I think if he had a full camp, he might have got that done. But against Luigi Burin, willed himself to victory. And then the next one against Pingwan Liu. So it's one of these things where sometimes Martinez gets into a bit of a coast mode, and I think that could cost him, if this fight does go to decision, because Andre Ewell is going to be banging that left hand. But at the same time, Martinez goes forward the entire fight, and that's one of those things that have given Andre Ewell problems in the past. So I'm very curious to see how these pocket exchanges are going to go. I think it's the hands of Ewell versus the kicks and the knees of Jonathan Martinez. I'm going to slightly lean with Martinez, but I think it's a coin flip type of fight, and I think it'll play out very exciting on Saturday night. Now, also in the bantamweight division, we got a matchup between Journey Newson, he's 9-2, and Domingo Pilarte is 8-2. Currently, they got Domingo Pilarte -130, and the comeback on Journey Newson is +110. Well, Shaq, this is interesting, man, because Domingo Pilarte came into the UFC with a lot of hype. You remember that Contender Series victory over Morales, choked him out. And then he goes out there against Felipe Cobacao Colares, and he was a big favorite in that spot, and he let a lot of people down against Felipe Colares. So now it's about, is he going to rebound against Journey Newson? And what's interesting to me about this matchup, Shaq, is that when you talk about Domingo Pilarte, or as we like to say in Brazil, Shaq, Domingo Pilarche, he's one of these guys that he's extremely tall for the weight class, and if he takes your back and he starts tying you up, chances are he might choke you out, but if he doesn't, you're going to lose that round. You're probably not going to scramble out.
I'll tell you what, Domingo Pilarte, man, his fights are wild.
Yeah. He's exciting, man. Yeah. But on the feet, he's very defensively liable, man. He fights from the southpaw stance. That right hand's down the entire time. I've seen him dropped in multiple fights, and I truly believe that if you go back and you watch his fight against Caio Machado, I believe it was his 3rd pro fight. Dude, when I tell you those two stood and banged in the pocket for 3 straight rounds, it was absolutely insane. Ever since that fight, not that something's been missing, but I almost feel like his willingness to brawl in the pocket has kind of diminished since that point because, dude, that was one of those fights where they literally put everything on the line to the point where in the 2nd and 3rd rounds, Domingo Pilarte's got his hands on his hips, huffing and puffing. And we're talking about a bantamweight. We're not talking about heavyweights here. So Domingo Pilarte, I feel like he let a lot out in that fight. And since that point, even though he's been winning, he's been having very sketchy moments in all his fights, and it's going to catch up to him. Now, luckily for him here with Journey Newsom, look, the kid's fun to watch, but it's one of those things where I'm not exactly entirely sure that he's UFC caliber. And that's no disrespect to the guy. Hey, Journey, you got all the chance to come prove me wrong on Saturday night, and I will tip my cap to you if you do. But the thing is, in that fight with Ramos, and I know Ramos is a very well-respected guy, but I just didn't like how much he was missing on his kicks and his punches. It was just one of those things where I'm not convinced he's going to be able to find the chin of Domingo Pilarte. So honestly, man, I think this is one of those fights where Domingo Pilarte can use his size, go forward, take this kid's back, and either ride him out or choke him out. So I'm going with Domingo Pilarte to get it done here.
Yeah, Journey Newsom, I like his story. A foster kid made it to the UFC, came in on short notice. I actually bet on Ramos in his debut. Thought it was a layup fight for the most part. And look, he showed some toughness, had a good guillotine attempt in there, ate some flying knees, some spinning elbows. So props to Journey Newsom. Pilarte, man, like you said, he's got sketchy moments in all of his fights, and I feel like Pilarte is going to be one of these guys that he shed a lot of blood out there on that local scene. And, when he now he's in the UFC, like you said, it's probably going to come back to haunt him. The kid does get dropped from time to time. He will get tired from time to time, but he's got the range and he's got the height on Journey Newsom. And Journey Newsom's a very short guy that likes to move backwards, and he moves backwards on this tall, long guy like Pilarte. I just see this being one of those typical fights, kind of like a Jamal Hill versus Darko Stasic a couple weeks, where you got the long sketchy guy a little bit. His defense might be a little sketchy, but the short stocky guy is gonna be moving backwards, and he might swing a couple hays up top and have a couple moments in the fight, get capitalize on a grappling mistake from Pilarte. But man, I just feel like in Houston, Texas, in Pilarte's. Even though Pilarte lost in San Antonio to Kobo, but he lost the first 2 rounds. I mean, just straight up, honestly. He was lucky that went to split. But I think that he's going to win a decision here. Probably, the 29-28, 31-29-28, 230-27s. Probably move forward, capitalize on that range. And Journey Newsom's probably going to hesitate to pull the trigger, man. I've seen him do it multiple times. I think he's a tough guy, but yeah, I think Pilarte is going to win a decision here.
Now, also in the bantamweight division, 3 back-to-back bantamweight fights. We got a matchup between Miles Johns, the former LFA champion, he's 10-0, and Mario Bautista is 7-1. Currently, they got Miles Johns minus 130, and the comeback on Mario Bautista is plus 110. Well, odds makers opened this minus 245 for Miles Johns, and all the public has been coming in on Mario Bautista. And honestly, look, Mario Bautista is a very exciting guy to watch. You watch his UFC debut against Corey Sandhagen, and even though he was the one to fall, to the flying knee, eventually got tapped out, he stood and banged in the pocket with a guy like Corey Sandhagen, so you got to give him a lot of credit for that. And then the next fight goes in there, gets fight of the night against Jinsu San. So I like Mario Bautista as a fan. I think that he's a very entertaining fighter, and I can't wait to watch every single fight this guy has, just because for a fact that he's a true Latin warrior that is willing to go out on his shield and put on a true fight for the fans. Now, when you talk about Miles Johns, this is a very well-rounded guy. And a lot of people say he's one-dimensional, but I disagree. I think he's a very well-rounded guy who knows what he has to do to get victories, and that's a quality you look for in these fighters. And I know he's often been criticized for his cardio. On Contender Series, he definitely gassed. There was a fight prior where he gassed as well, but on Contender Series, I think it was one of those situations where, look, he tore his groin in that second round, and he still fought through it and won every single round in that fight. So I got to give the guy a lot of credit for his mental toughness, his resolve. But the common theme that I've been hearing people saying about this fight is how Mario Bautista has significantly more volume than Miles Johns. Now, that might be true when he's fighting, no disrespect to Jinsu San, very entertaining fighter, but a walking punching bag like Jinsu San, who's not a takedown threat. Now, granted, Jinsu San took him down twice, and I heard Jinsu San has a bit of a wrestling background, but it's not the same. When we talk about Miles Johns, we're talking about a state champion wrestler. We're not talking about, he did a couple camps here. No, we're talking about a real lifelong wrestler here. So the thing with that fight with Jinsu San is that Jinsu San walks forward, and the reason people love Jinsu San so much is because in that fight prior, where Peter Yan also landed 100+ significant strikes on Jinsu San's face, it wasn't about Jinsu San, landing any offense on Peter Yan that made people fall in love. It was the fact that Peter Yan would go out there, hit him with a 6-piece, and then Jinsu Son would smile at him. That's why the fans love Jinsu Son so much. So when Mario Bautista went out there and teed off on the guy, they have a nice little fight of the night. Now everyone's in love with Mario Bautista. And I like the guy too. He's very exciting to watch. But back to this whole volume thing, you know, I think that on the feet, Miles Johns has a lot of power. And that power is going to make Mario Bautista hesitant to throw as much volume. And then there's the threat of the takedown too. So I think that Miles Johns is going to put together the complete MMA game. When he's thinking about takedowns, Miles Johns is going to go up top with some heavy shots. And when Mario Bautista is like, oh shit, why is this guy banging with me? Then Miles Johns is going to mix in that entry, duck under, and get the takedown. So I think Miles Johns is going to keep the very tough Mario Bautista guessing the entire time. And I think Miles Johns is going to come out here and win a decision. Look, a lot of people have been criticizing him for his fight against Cole Smith. Look, Cole Smith, I like to call him the bantamweight Chiesa. Look, this guy's 6 feet tall for bantamweight. I mean, he goes out there, and if he takes your back one time, you're not getting out that round. You better hope you survive the choke, come back, and win the next round. And I know for a fact Mario Bautista is not the bantamweight Chiesa. Mario Bautista is a very exciting Latin warrior that likes to stand and bang. Completely different matchup. So I think Miles Johns has the path to victory here, and I think he's going to get it done via unanimous decision. I think it's going to be a more dominant win than his UFC debut.
Yeah, you know, Miles Johns had that fight with Cole Smith. Some people thought it was controversial. It was a close fight in Canada, but hey, man, he won that third round for a guy that has suspect cardio. You know, he was able to suck it up in that third round and fairly dominate that round. So maybe that cardio thing. Look, anybody with his build is gonna, you know, need a little rest here and there. I mean, when you're that stocky and that muscular, I mean, so to say he has bad cardio, I mean, if anything, he's got good cardio. You know what I'm saying? To be built like that, man, you're gonna fatigue at times. So I think people are, you know, overblowing it a little bit. Mario Bautista, I respect him. That fight with Corey Sandhagen, like you said, he came out there and banged, had a nice showing against Jinsu Son, but we felt like going into that Son Bautista fight, that, like you said, we knew that Jinsu Son was getting too much credit for that Peter Yan performance. I mean, look, guys, people were out there saying that Jinsu Son won a round, or, you know, I was like, whoa, what? Like, won a round? Like, he didn't win. He got 10-8 every round. But anyways, I mean, look, Peter was playing with the kid, man. He was out there working on different techniques. But so yeah, we knew that line was off, and you know, Bautista went out there and did his thing, threw a lot of volume. Like you said, Jinsu Son takes a lot of punches. He wants to be like his big bro Zombie and take that punishment and dish it out. But unfortunately, he's just not built for that. And unfortunately, I think he got released earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken. So Jinsu Son is no longer with the company. Miles Johns, he's very meat and potatoes. There's nothing flashy about anything that he does, but meat and potatoes is very high percentage. High percentage wins a lot of fights. Look, if he presses a guy on the cage for 3-4 minutes, and let's say Mario Bautista, he does have a volume edge, but Miles Johns, I feel like, is going to be able to take his 3 and then land a huge one that steals everything that Mario just did. I agree. I see him winning a decision, being too physical. I definitely see him capitalizing on the takedowns. Miles has a very good single leg. Like you said, he's a state champion wrestler, and if you watch some of Mario Bautista's Combate Americas fights, man, he gave up some, you know, easy takedowns. That's still a work in progress in his game. Very scrappy kid, but I feel like the power and the just that consistency that I see from Fortis, I think he's gonna come into this fight very well prepared, press Mario on that fence, kill that clock, get a takedown here and there, land the big shots, and get the job done.
Now, next up in the welterweight division, we got a matchup between Alex the Great White Morono, he's 17-5, and Kalinn Williams is 9-1. Currently, they got Alex Morono -325, and the comeback on Kalinn Williams is +265. Well, Shaq, it's been a while since we've seen Alex Morono as this big of a favorite. What kind of chance do you give the UFC debutant Kalinn Williams here?
Man, Kalinn Williams is big. He's a very big boy. I mean, he's a lot bigger than Morono. So, I mean, that is something you got to be worried about. The thing is just, this type of spot, usually they're bringing in the newcomer on a week notice or a week and some change. The odds definitely, are not in his favor. So, I think, I forget the exact percentage, but it's very, if you're making a 1 week short notice, you're most likely going to lose. So, I think that Kalinn Williams has a bright future, but, you can see some very striking errors that he makes, man. He makes a lot of mistakes in his striking, but he gets away with it just out of that size that he's got, and he's so physical. But he just strikes me as more of a physical, grinding type of guy that can grind decisions out. He's a very tough kid, but I just think Morono at this current stage, the improvements, not necessarily improvements, but it seems like he's just executing slightly better in spots. He's got more direction in there since he's been in there with Safe. The prior fights, he was kind of all over the place, trying to go for guillotines and giving up takedowns, and he still gives up takedowns, but he's done enough damage on the feet now to, it doesn't matter. Look at that fight with Kenan Song out there in China. In Kenan's hometown, he won a decision, won the fight of the night. Then he finishes Otto in less than 2 minutes, and then he goes in there against Max Griffin as an underdog. I actually bet him in that fight, and, he looked really good in that fight. Still gave up a lot of takedowns. That's one thing you got to worry about Morono. He will give up takedowns, but I just feel like he's going to capitalize in the striking here, get Kalinn Williams to maybe shoot a bad shot, and I see Morono winning this fight by guillotine, or some type of submission or a ground and pound stoppage. I think that he's just too experienced. He's well prepared. He was getting ready for a war with Diego Lima. I think Kalinn Williams will be back, but I think that on Saturday it's going to be a good night for Morono in his hometown of Houston.
Yeah, look, Kalinn Williams kind of reminds me of an inexperienced Derrick Brunson. He's very physical, very big. He'll run in wild with his chin in the air, swing some big bombs, but if you're not quite on his level, he'll knock you out. He'll grind you out. I've seen him take guys down as well. He even choked out Ladarius Jackson, who our buddy Jared Nitrain Gooden knocked out with a flying knee. And most recently, they got a little beef because Kalinn Williams actually just beat Alex Morono's teammate, Jeremy Holloway, back in November. So Coach Safe is very familiar with this kid. He's going to come out here most likely with the right game plan. The thing with this guy Morono, I feel like he's an overachiever, man. Like, this is his 10th UFC fight. Who would have thought this guy would make it to 10 UFC fights? And dude, he's been shining, man. He's a very exciting guy to watch, especially since he made that switch to Fortis MMA. Because if you saw that stunt he pulled against Jordan Meehan, you would have thought, okay, one more of these and the guy's gone. But since that point, he's put together 3 straight wins, and he's been looking the best he's ever looked. Now, granted, there still are some areas that he needs to patch up, mainly the takedown defense. But for me, it's really the cardio, because you watch that fight against Max Griffin, and he wins the first round clearly. Second round was very close up until he landed that head kick, which dropped him. And you hear Safe in the corner saying, "We don't get tired from winning, Alex." Like, what the fuck are you gassing out for? It was kind of funny. And then the last round he lost. So it's one of those things where it might not matter. It might not hurt him in this specific fight. But going forward, you need to be very careful who you pick him against. And here, I'm not personally willing to lay the minus 325. Look, when it was a pick 'em earlier in the week, I was a little more interested, get those limits a little lifted. I might have taken that chance, but here at minus 325, I would recommend sitting back and enjoying the show. So I'm gonna go with Alex Morono to win this fight, but I do think it's a bit wide, but I understand just the experience difference and all that stuff. So that's all baked into the line here. But I'm gonna go with Alex Morono for the victory. Now, next up in the flyweight division, we got a matchup between Andrea KGB Lee, she's 11-3, and Lauren Murphy is 11-4. Currently, they got Andrea Lee minus 365, and the comeback on Lauren Murphy is plus 305. Well, Shaq, we haven't really been too high on Lauren Murphy in the past, but I'll tell you what, for someone that we haven't been high on, she went out there last fight, knocked out her opponent. That's something you don't often see in the women's flyweight division. You think she's got what it takes to make it 2 in a row here and get a second straight upset?
Yeah, look, it seemed like she had a little bit more spirit in her for that Mara Barella fight, but let's not forget Barella's been knocked out like 4 or 5 times, if I'm not mistaken. So, but hey, she did. Usually when you hear Lauren Murphy, you just think, negative for the most part. I remember that Tough Show, my boy Eddie had to get on her, you know what I'm saying? But Lauren Murphy, it seemed like she had a little bit more spirit in that last fight. Andrea Lee, in my opinion, is definitely the better striker. The thing with Lee is, I don't think she's overrated, but I don't think she's, minus 335. I mean, look, I'm going to pick her by decision here. I think she's slightly faster, throws more volume. Lauren's definitely got a very basic fighting style. She's a grinder. She likes to move forward, get dirty, get ugly in there. And that could possibly make this fight play out a little bit closer. I mean, there is a very good chance that this turns into a 1. This could be a 1-1 going into the third round situation, you know? So I'm going to pick Lee by decision. I think she's the better striker, throws more volume. But Murphy put on that. She's got some good pressure, man, and she's got some good vet tactics in there. Andrea Lee, I wasn't that impressed in her De La Rosa fight. The Evan Smith fight, I mean, Evan Smith, no offense, but I mean, I think they're sending Evan Smith down there to London to fight Molly. I mean, that just shows you what they think, you know what I'm saying? So I think Andrea Lee was slightly overrated. Her last fight, she was a big favorite to Calderwood. I think she was over 2-1, and she lost a split decision there. I think she's gonna win the decision here, but it just would not shock me if it was 1-1 going into that third round, and you know, then it's gonna get real sweaty, you know. So I'm gonna pick Lee. Think she's the better striker. I think she's shown that she can at least fend off some takedowns. So I'm gonna take Lee by decision.
Look, I got to give Lauren Murphy a lot of credit. This is someone that I used to completely shit on every single time she fought. And, I mean, for good reason. You saw her attitude on The Ultimate Fighter, going out there losing to chicks with 3-2 records, the whole bit. And, you know, was one of those fighters that's always complaining about, oh, UFC should do this for me and that. You know, the whole bit. She was basically, she was kind of a loser. But, man, I got to give her a lot of credit because something seems to have clicked, and I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not saying.
If I'm not mistaken, she left the lab and she went back to her original gym. So maybe that's what did it.
Yeah, and when I say things have clicked, I'm not sitting here saying she's about to go on some title run or anything like that. But what I am saying is that she might actually keep her place in the company, because at one point I was like, dude, yeah, this ain't going to end well. But that last performance gave me a little faith in her that, hey, you know what? Maybe you're finally coming into your own after all these years. And with KGB Lee, look, she's exciting. She's got the look. She's got the cowboy hat. She's got the smile. She's got the striking style, the whole bit. But, man, ever since that shit went down last year and she hasn't had her coach, she ain't been looking the same. And I don't know what it is, man. Like that fight against Montana De La Rosa, Shaq and I were in attendance in Greenville, and I mean, that was the fight where we had to go out and buy food in the concession stand. You understand what I'm saying? It was just kind of very underwhelming. Then the next one against Joanne Calderwood as a big favorite. Let's be honest. You know, it says on paper it was a split decision, but you and I both know that was no split decision. That was a clear win for Joanne Calderwood. Now, in this spot, yes, it is a step down in competition, and most likely KGB can use her volume and just her cleaner strikes to come out here and win this decision, but I ain't laying minus 365 to find out, and I wish anyone that does luck. I'm going to go with Andrea Lee via decision, but I would be very careful at the betting window. Now, next up in the middleweight division, we got a matchup between Trevin Officer Giles, he's 11-2, and Antonio Arroyo is 9-3. Currently, they got Trevin Giles minus 140, and the comeback on Antonio Arroyo is plus 120. Well, Shaq, both these guys are coming off L's. One guy's looking to rebound here in the middleweight division, but it's a really interesting matchup. Both guys have been criticized for their fight IQ, but both guys have shown pretty good athleticism at times. Who are you going for?
Yeah, man. When I watch both of these guys, they kind of remind me a lot of each other, man, because you got Giles, he's got this hand speed, you know, he's real good with the 1s and 2s, but seems like he kind of likes to grapple more. It seems like that's kind of more of his comfort zone. He likes to be on top and land on guys. And when you really look back in hindsight to the hype that Giles had on him, it was so unwarranted. I mean, when you look at he did beat Brendan Allen and Spann and all these guys before the UFC, but sometimes necessarily, man, you see a lot of that on the local scene, man. I mean, I know, for example, a guy that we know, Robert Hill, he beat Cameron Neville, but Cameron Neville is less than 500 if I'm not mistaken. But guess who Cameron Neville beat that's fighting in the UFC, you know? I mean, look, shit, Alon Cruz, things happen out there on that local scene, and sometimes, his record, you see Spann and you see Brendan Allen, and I think he beat someone else I can't think of. And, you think, man, this guy, You know, he's a future top 15 guy, you know. And Giles, honestly, was nowhere near that level. I mean, all he did was beat James Bochnovic, and he couldn't even do it in a round. I'm just kidding. He did leave Bochnovic out there on the stretcher, but
that was a vicious.
I mean, they had to bring the stretcher out, and then he beat Antonio Braganetto, who, if I'm not mistaken, is out here playing poker these days. Was off a 3-year layoff. I mean, no one had even heard of Braganetto for a while there. So Trevin had 2 easy layup fights for his first 2 fights, and then he gets a big step up with Cummings, who's around that 500 level, and it was 1-1, I believe, going into that 3rd round. Giles seemed to be having the faster punches, but it seemed like he slowed down. It was just a guy like Cummings might be able to bring those flaws out, and then he fights another grizzled vet like Mirsad, and he exposes him as well. It was the fight IQ. You know, Mirsad, no offense, is very slow, and Giles has a big speed advantage. Why not stay on the outside? But man, he got baited into that grappling match with Mirsad, and you know, like I said earlier, it seems like Trevin, his comfort zone is probably that grappling. Now Arroyo, on the other hand, is more of a kicker. He needs space. He's tall, 6'3", I believe. He likes to switch stance. He throws spin kicks, and it seems like Arroyo definitely does have a fatigue state that he can get tired and start to, you know, pull what I like to call Brazilian stunts. You know, he definitely has that in him. So I feel like both guys are even. I think that Giles has faster hands, Arroyo has better kicks. But one thing I'll say that I like about Arroyo, going into the Andre Muniz fight, you know, Andre Muniz only has 1 fight in the UFC, hadn't won 2 on Contender Series, I believe. One thing about Muniz, me and you both know him. A lot of people might know him, but not a lot of people might not know him. But, man, he's a top-notch black belt for that middleweight division. I mean, we've seen the type of stuff this guy can do on the ground. I mean, you're gonna see Andre Muniz pull off a lot of submissions in the UFC. And going into that fight, man, I was not convinced that if he got on top of Arroyo, Arroyo had been submitted twice before, I believe, with some very stupid mistakes. And I'll tell you what, his grappling has definitely gotten a lot better because I'll tell you, if Trevin fought Andre Muniz, you might see Trevin sleep on that floor again, man. So I think it's a very even fight. It's in Trevin's hometown. Arroyo better make this clear, or they're probably going to give this decision to Trevin. But I'm going to actually go with Arroyo here, man. I feel like Trevin is one of these guys where a couple years ago he had a lot of steam behind him, but I feel like a lot of people don't know he's got that other job. I don't know if he can fully dedicate himself as much as the next guy, like Antonio Arroyo, who's, you know, this is his life, for example. Trevin Giles has a whole nother career. Not saying, you know, not frowning down upon it or anything like that, but I just think that Trevin Giles has had, he had a huge layoff in between the Braganetto fight and the Cummings fight because, you know, he was in the process of becoming an officer. Let's see if he's a little bit more comfortable now, but I just got a feeling Arroyo's going to come out here and pull off the upset. I'm going to say by unanimous decision.
It's a very interesting fight, man. It's a really tough one for me to call because obviously with Arroyo, I like the fact that very tall for the weight class, comes out there firing some serious kicks, and I've criticized his ground game in the past, and for someone who I've criticized on the mat, he survived every Andre Muniz submission attempt, so I got to give him a lot of props for that. But, man, I still feel like Arroyo has a lot of room for improvement and might not quite be ready for this level yet. There's a reason he didn't get signed off his first Contender Series fight, and they signed him off the second one because he won 2 in a row, but wasn't really because that performance was that impressive, at least in my opinion. Other people might disagree, but I didn't think that performance was anything special. And you know, it's easy for me to say that here, you know, on a chair with a computer in front of me. The guy would absolutely mop the floor with me. That's not what I'm saying at all. Just from a UFC caliber perspective, if we're out here scouting these guys, I wasn't quite sold on him yet, but I do think he has potential. Very big guy, very aggressive, kicks very hard, good submission defense. And with Trevin Giles, he's definitely let a lot of people down his last 2 fights, but the caliber of fighters he fought those last 2, not only were they experienced black belts, but the amount of fights those guys have in the UFC, outside the UFC, it was just a big step up in competition. And now I feel like Trevin Giles is fighting a guy that is more so, you know, someone on the same level as him, maybe a step below. And this is the kind of fight where, hey, if Trevin Giles doesn't win this fight, he's getting cut. So I think
he actually got a new 4-fight deal, so
they might cut it short because that'll be 3 L's in a row. So it's one of those things where he better come out here, and if he loses, he still has to perform. But I think Trevin is going to get it done, man. I think he's slightly more athletic. Interestingly enough, Arroyo's the taller guy. Giles has the reach advantage in this spot, and I think he's going to mix in takedowns, kind of grind it out. It might be really close, but I'm going to say Trevin Giles to just edge out a very close decision here. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Derrick, the Black Beast Lewis, he's 22-7, and Ilir, the Sledgehammer Latifi, is 14-7. Currently, they got Derrick Lewis minus 225, and the comeback on Ilir Latifi is plus 185. Well, Shaq, it opened minus 265 for the Black Beast. Now it's minus 225. A lot of action's been coming in on Ilir Latifi, and you and I both know, look, the guy's got an awesome gimmick. The Horse Lord, those pictures are awesome, but when it comes to the actual fight itself, are you buying the hype here? Do you think he knocks out Derrick Lewis?
Not at all. I think this is. I'm a little shocked at this. No, look, I'm not saying that Black Beast doesn't go in there and do an occasional there's not an occasional what the fuck moment from Black Beast, but at the same time, Ilir Latifi was a 7-5 light heavyweight. Lost to Bader by knockout, lost to Ozdemir, lost to, Blachowicz, all by finish, if I'm not mistaken. Musasi, and again, the Corey Anderson one before the Ozdemir fight. So I think that in all honesty, when you really look at where Latifi was at 205, I know you see the number 4 or whatever it was next to his name when he fought Corey, but guys, look, sometimes Ally Kintel was ranked number 4 at one point in time. Look, sometimes there's one ranking that's just way off, and he's not that caliber fighter, in my opinion. I think Ilir Latifi is a guy he's got good fundamentals. He's been fighting in that southpaw stance lately. It seems like he can catch a couple guys like Sean O'Connell and fucking and Hans Stringer and shit like that. But every time he stepped up in competition despite OSP, I don't know why OSP decided to come out unorthodox for that. I don't know what happened. But
still trying to figure that out to this day.
I don't know why he did that. But look, OSP is good, but he's on his way out as well, man. I just think Ilir is in big trouble on Saturday night. Now, I think Derrick Lewis in his last fight against Blagoy Baga, I think he showed I don't want to say improvements, but it just seemed like he had a little bit more sense of urgency after he had that big layoff after the JDS fight. He had to take care of some injuries. And I feel like he was a little bit more alert in positions and where he was just a little, like in the clinch, he was turning them a little bit faster, even going for takedowns of his own. He gave up some takedowns as well. But one thing I love about Black Beast, man, when he gets up off bottom, man, he is about to unload a serious barrage of punches on you, and I am not convinced Ilir Latifi can eat those. You see him against guys like Bader, he's ducking his head down, he eats a knee, he goes out stiff. We've seen him stiff several times. Ozdemir fight, he was face down as well. Corey Anderson fight, Corey put that pressure on him. He's just showing patterns of he's 37 years old. He's moving up a weight class now. He thinks that this is the answer. This reminds me a lot of Rockhold, Weidman, but he wasn't even never that good. He ain't even no former champion. So I think he's too small for heavyweight. I think the second Black Beast really touches that chin. I think he's going to go out stiff. And Black Beast, he's had moments where he's done a lot of shit, but let me tell you who that was against. First off, we're talking legitimate, stamped top 10 heavyweights. Alexander Volkov. Volkov fucking beat Verdum, you know what I'm saying? Black Beast still knocked him out unconscious. The Shamil Abdurrahimov fight. Shamil might not be the best, but he's a stamped top 10 heavyweight with wins over Arlovsky and Marcin Tybura, by knockout. So, who else has he beaten?
Ngannou?
He fucking beat Francis Ngannou. I actually call that upset. Look, Black Beast is a stamped one. There is no way in hell I see him losing this fight in Houston, in his hometown, to Ilir Latifi. He's just too much of a dog. Ilir Latifi isn't, and that's just the facts. I think Latifi backs up in a lot of his fights. I don't see, if he's thinking he's going to wrestle Black Beast for 3 rounds, I think he's deeply mistaken. I don't think he's big enough for that. He can't even do that against Tyson Pedro barely, you know what I'm saying? So I think Black Beast knocks him out in the first round.
Yeah, look, you brought up Black Beast get-up game, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, man, because not only is it very impressive, look, he'll be inside control bottom, immediately he'll buck, get right to his knees, get right back up, but when that flurry comes, I mean, it's the kind of flurry that makes up for the fact that he was just taken down. He gets the points back right away. And we're talking about a guy in Black Beast, people like to joke around, about the Popeyes and this and that. Yeah, right. Listen, this is a guy that throws flying knees, head kicks. The uppercuts come from your mama's house. I mean, this guy is fucking amazing to watch.
Swinging and banging.
When he's teeing off on someone, it's one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen, because that he really epitomizes true violence inside that cage. So I really enjoy watching him fight. And people criticize how Black Beast has low volume. Ilir Latifi has lower volume. People criticize how, Black Beast does questionable things in fights. Latifi has done more questionable things, has been put to sleep more, and quite frankly, is just too small for heavyweight. No 5'8" guy should be fighting at heavyweight. And I know my boy Jeff Monson might have an issue with that, but hey, Jeff.
How'd things turn out for Jeff, though?
You know what I'm saying? You ain't top 10 in the heavyweight division, are you, buddy? But
there was a point where everyone was running. No, all respect to Jeff Monson, but
and look, everyone hearing us talk shit, just know we understand this guy would north-south choke me and all these things. This ain't about me versus him. Derrick Lewis is going to go out there and knock out Ilir Latifi. I mean, most likely in the first round. But if it doesn't happen in the first round, hey, this guy's got a knack for going out there and finishing guys in the third, and that might happen as well. So I'm going to go with Black Beast to knock out Ilir Latifi here. Now, next up in the featherweight division, we got a matchup between Mirsad Bektic, he's 13-2, and Dan 50K Ige is 12-2. Currently, they got Mirsad Bektic minus 135, and the comeback on Dan Ige is plus 115. Well, I know it was originally Dynamite Dan Ige. You like his new nickname, Dan 50K
change it to
Ige?
50K?
Yeah, he's trying to send a message here. What do you think?
Oh, that's interesting, man. That's some big balls. I like the little face-off they had earlier. Bektic had to take off his shirt.
He pulled a Kamaru.
He got right in his face, so I can't wait for this fight. Bektic is one of these guys. He's got all the physical attributes. He's been hyped up for so long. I mean, we've been hearing things about Bektic, for at least before he was in the UFC, training with, George and Dustin and all those great guys at ATT. Now he switched camps. He's at TriStar. Mirsad Bektic, man, is an interesting case. He's one of those great athletes who's got, it just seems like, well, he's got a suspect chin, we know that, but it just seems like there's a lot of things going up in that head. Now in comparison to Ige, when he first came into the UFC, I mean, I was not high on him at all. The Arce fight, I mean, he got absolutely dominated, but I think that fight lit a fire under him to start getting better and start achieving things on this level. Now you saw him going there against Jordan Griffin in Milwaukee. Now he's dominated that first round. It seems like he's got a little pattern. He likes to drop the second round. He dropped that second round big to Griffin, but then he mustered enough cardio up and he was able to get the takedowns in the third round. But it was still like, Ige, he's shaky, man. But then he fought Danny Henry, who, did finish Hakeem Dawodu in less than 30 seconds. If they ran that back, it wouldn't go down like that. But that was a very good performance. Finished him in, I think, a minute and some change. And then the Kevin Aguilar fight was a very good performance. Now, the only thing I'm struggling with is I think the Aguilar win was great and all. Aguilar was 17-1, if I'm not mistaken. I was there in attendance. I mean, Ige put on a hell of a performance that I didn't think he was going to do. But my only thing is, if you watch Kevin Aguilar fights in the past, I mean, Aguilar gets dropped a lot, gets wobbled a lot. He always finds a way to win for the most part, but I mean, I think it possibly might have caught up to him, and Ige was finally the guy to exploit it. But there was plenty of times where you saw Kevin Aguilar getting dropped, wobbled, the Rick Glenn fight, the third round of the Barzola fight. So it was a good win, but is Aguilar anywhere on Mirsad's level? Probably not. I mean, just athletically speaking, he's got Ige beat in the wrestling department, in my opinion. He's faster hands, fast twitch. It's just that at times, man, he's struggled with his chin. Ige, I feel like, he did open the slight favorite. It seems like he's got a lot of momentum behind him, so I wouldn't be shocked if he came in here and got the upset. It's just that this fight that he's in now with Mirsad, unless Mirsad really, his chin is really that shot, I just feel like this is a completely different fight. I'm not high on Mirsad right now, but I still think he's got some decent fight left in him. I still think he's a top 15 talent-wise fighter. Now, does he perform like that all the time? He just seems like he's so hell-bent on the wrestling. Look, he's probably going to fight the same. I just still view him as slightly better than Dan Ige in every aspect, and I think Ige's I don't want to say only shot is to possibly drop him, but the thing, possibly knock him out. But the thing with Ige is, man, he likes to grapple. You know, he might try to take Mirsad's back in those type of situations, and I just feel like if they tie up, Mirsad's going to be a lot stronger. So I think that Mirsad's probably going to edge out a decision. But from a betting perspective, Mirsad's is very shaky, man. I feel like he's got a lot of things going on up in that head. He's a kind of a prima donna. And he's kind of been put on this pedestal from a very early spot in his career when he might have not necessarily deserved it. So Ige has been getting better fight to fight. I'm interested to see what happens, but I'm going to say Mirsad Bektic by unanimous decision. But from a betting perspective, it's dog or pass.
Yeah, there's another fight that's very tough for me to call, man, because with Mirsad Bektic, he's almost like the complete package in terms of the output, but it's just how does he react to these shots? That's always been my issue. And it's not just because he got knocked out against Josh Emmett his last fight. I know people like to talk about, he got knocked out by a jab. I mean, look, Josh Emmett's one of the hardest hitters in that weight class. And when your forward momentum's going like that, it's not just about, he got dropped by a jab. No, he ran into that jab and went down. I don't think it was a stunt. I just think the guy's chin has been suspect since his UFC debut. I mean, we all remember, or at least I remember, when Chas Skelly knocked him out in the second round. Now, back then, it was before the unified rules. So, they took a point. It ended up, being a majority decision. But if that was in 2020's rules, that's a second-round TKO for Chas Skelly. Also, the Elkins fight, where he's absolutely dominating the guy to a point where you're wondering when the ref's going to step in. You're wondering when the corner is going to throw in the towel. And then it's Elkins that goes out there and knocks out Bektic. So it's one of those things where you have to respect the power of Dan Ige because, this guy's floored a bunch of his opponents. In that last fight with Aguilar, people only remember that he got on top of him. People don't remember in that first round he dropped him with a clean hook. So, man, these pocket exchanges are going to be very, very interesting. It's just, I do agree with you that Mirsad's the better fighter in this spot. He's so much more physical than Dan Ige. And Dan Ige does this thing where he rocks guys and he tends to take their back, and oftentimes it'll work out. He can choke you out. But I've seen in other fights he gets slipped off the back. And then once he's on his own back, not that his get-up game isn't on point. That's not the case. It's just more so that he expends so much energy trying to get that finish. It's like, hey, well, maybe we need to take a little breather here, and that gives his opponents a chance to come back. And against a guy like Mirsad Bektic, when he's on top of you, I'm not convinced that Ige is going to be able to get back up. So it is another coin flip type fight for me, but I agree with you, man. I think the physical attributes of Bektic can trump Dan Ige in this spot, but I wouldn't go crazy at the betting window because you gotta question the guy's durability, and I gotta see firsthand if he can take these shots. So I'm gonna pick Bektic by split decision, but we'll be tuning in very closely here on Saturday night. Now, next up in the heavyweight division, we got a matchup between Juan Adams, he's 5-2, and Justin Tafa is 3-1. Currently, they got Juan Adams minus 250, and the comeback on Justin Tafa is plus 210. Well, Shaq, I know the fans that have to battle. Remember, we successfully faded Juan Adams in both of his last fights, both at dog money on Arjan and Greg Hardy. You think it's gonna be a third? You think it's gonna be a third upset here? You think this guy's about to get slept?
Yeah, it's another good matchup. Both guys are around the same level in my opinion. Tafa was probably needed a couple more fights before he was in the UFC, but hey, man, the UFC needs heavyweights, and I feel like a lot of people forget that about Juan Adams. Juan Adams, his Contender Series performance against Sean Teed. Sean Teed is a complete can, and Dana White signed him for what reason?
He's 6'5". We need heavyweights.
We need heavyweights. You know what I'm saying? Look, that's the honest truth about it is they'll pretty much sign any heavyweight that fights on Contender Series. Dontel Mays got signed. You know what I'm saying? If you're a heavyweight and you win on Contender Series, Alan Crowder. You're getting signed. You're gonna get picked up. So I think that Juan Adams came in labeled as some prospect, like, oh my God, this new heavyweight. But like me and you both know the kid was, off ride. But I will say I'm struggling with his mindset, coming into this fight because I feel like he is saying some good things. I think everyone for the most part knows that he switched camps. He's in New Mexico now, which even if he's not necessarily working with Wink and Greg, is probably a better situation for him than his his gym in Houston. But the reason I'm gonna say this is because, I mean, look, if you guys go to Juan Adams' IG, he's been getting very, very intimate in his IG post, and it's been like that for a while. And the reason why I say this is because I know that the kid is kind of a mental case. I mean, I'm not, shaming anyone with mental health. I mean, everyone struggles with mental health, but I'm saying, I mean, look how he was acting before the Greg Hardy fight. You know what I'm saying? Look how he was acting before the Bueller fight. He was talking about eating Twinkies. He was talking about eating oatmeal cream pies and double stuffed Oreos after weigh-ins. And then the Greg Hardy fight, we already know. We don't need to get into details about that, but I feel like there's a chance where he's kind of overcompensating a little bit to make up for those for that foolishry that he did those last two fights. So, but I think the kid probably is coming a lot better. He says he's got a new stance. So I feel like we probably will see the best Juan Adams. Now Tafa, on the other hand, we really don't have much to go off of. A lot of his fights out there in Australia, I don't want to say were freak shows, but all we really know is that he comes from a striking family, and he's got some good hands. The other parts of his game, it seemed pretty decent in the clinch against De Castro. I just feel like he made a small mistake, a rookie mistake at 3-0, and it kind of seemed like he actually clipped De Castro and initially with a straight hand, rushed in and got caught. So De Castro's one of these underrated fighters. De Castro's actually fighting Greg Hardy coming up here shortly, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm excited for that fight. But I just think Tafa fought a guy that is actually somewhat going places, as where, Juan Adams, I just feel like unless he makes big improvements, man, I just feel like this is somewhat of a 50-50 fight. I'll slightly lean. I feel like Juan Adams should be the favorite here just because he has at least one UFC win, and he's fought 3 times here, and he's had more fights on the local scene. So I agree with him being a favorite, but -2, something for a guy that, for what he has shown right now, is bad footwork, suspect cardio, just, irrational decisions in there. So, I think that he's probably going to win, but from a betting perspective, I just wouldn't play it unless he's really this new man that he claims to be. I mean, if he was ever going to do it, I guess Tafa would be, somewhat the type of guy. But Tafa, man, he might show a lot better. He's been in Thailand training. He comes from this big striking family. Maybe he feels a lot more comfortable in his second time in there. And I feel like Tafa wasn't really too down on that KO loss. I feel like his coaches kind of picked him up very well. They told him, we'll be back. And I feel like he has a more even-killed mental state, So I feel like Tafa has a good, it's heavyweight, and Juan Adams leaves his chin in the air. He makes a lot of mistakes, man. So I think it's a dogger pass from a betting perspective. But I mean, if you say Juan Adams is more developed, I'm not gonna disagree with you. So.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting fight. Obviously, you guys know how we feel about Juan Adams. I mean, any guy who's in the UFC bragging about how they hide Oreos under their pillows, like, it's just red flag, man. Like, that's not how a true professional athlete acts. And this whole thing about him being a D1 wrestler and stuff.
Whoever said he was a D1 wrestler is, like, that was so false, bro. Like,
they're acting like he's some All-American. The dude had over 30 losses in wrestling. Like, what are you fucking talking about? The only reason he made the team was there were 5 guys in his weight class. It's one of those things where, so after the last loss where, this guy's allegedly a wrestler and he folds on a single leg, which is allegedly his realm where he should have success. So then he moves to Jackson Wink. Now I know Jackson Wink, they have a reputation for being a great gym, even though you and I both know that lately shit's changed. It's basically John. It's called Jones Wink now.
It's Jones Wink.
But
we don't give a shit about you if your name's not Jon Jones or Holly Holm, and that's
just facts. But so he flies to Jackson Wink to do this camp, right? And you imagine that if some guy is flying to another state that he's not from, he's living in the dorms, he's doing the whole bit. Hey, the guy's got to be living in the gym, right?
He is. Yeah.
I mean, technically he's living in the gym because he's in the dorms, but when I talk about living in the gym, what I mean is you're showing up in the AM and you're there until the gym closes. You know what I'm saying? You might be doing a little extracurricular. You might be the guy wiping down the mats. But from what I've seen, because I've been following this guy very closely, he's got teammates from Jackson Wink hitting him up on IG being like, hey, man, are you showing up to the gym today? When you have people asking, are you showing up to the gym today?
So you're saying he's skipping practice here and there?
I mean, to skip practice in your hometown, okay, that's already unacceptable. But when you're flying and you're supposed to be living here, you're supposed to be fully consumed and immersed in all these things, and people are still asking you, hey, are you showing up to the gym today? And they're like, what time are you going to be there? It's like, dude, clearly he's not living in the gym. Clearly he's not there 24/7.
What if he had like a small injury or something?
And then another thing. So this camp was during the holidays. Justin Tafa did this whole camp in Thailand with Tiger Muay Thai. He's got a very well-rounded program over there. I know for a fact Justin Tafa stayed away from his family, sacrificed a lot, did not fly home for the holidays, basically been living in camp the whole time. You know who did fly home for the holidays? Mr. Little Debbie Juan Adams. And this is a guy who...
You think he had a Twinkie?
So you want to tell me that Juan Adams flew home for the holidays and I was supposed to believe he didn't eat anything while he was home with his family? Like, come on, man. I definitely question the mental state. 100% I still do. Physically speaking, big boy, 6'5", 81-inch reach, the whole bit. But, man, the stand-up, the footwork is just not developed yet. And this fight stays standing. And Juan Adams likes to stand and strike with all his opponents. You watch that fight on Contender Series, and he actually had a very nice takedown early on. But then he lets his opponent back up because he wants to stand and bang with him. He starts doing shit like that here, and I think he might hit the deck. Now, the whole argument here is, oh, Juan Adams only needs one takedown, the fight will be over shortly after. I disagree. I think if Justin Tafa can come out here and survive on the ground in that early going, come back in the second round, I think he can knock out Juan Adams here. Look, I've seen Justin Tafa in some very bad spots, but I've also seen him overcome all those bad spots. All he's got to do here is survive this first round against Juan Adams, come out there in the second round. I think he's going to knock out Juan Adams. So I'm going with Justin Tafa to get a huge upset here. Co-main event of the evening for the flyweight belt. We got Valentina Bullet Shevchenko. She's 18-3, and Katlyn Chookagian is 13-2. Currently, they got Valentina Shevchenko minus 1,000. The comeback on Katlyn Chookagian is plus 650. Well, Shaq, needless to say, a lot of action's been coming in on the underdog, Katlyn Chookagian. It went from minus 1,250 to minus 1,000 here on Valentina. Do you think Katlyn Chookagian can run around the ring, make tennis sounds, and steal this title?
No. Chookagian's a good fighter, but man, what's happened every time she took, that number one contender type fight? When she fought Jessica Ai, what happened? When she fought Liz Carmouche, what happened? I mean, she got bullied, she got pushed back, didn't respond well. I mean, those girls came after her. Valentina's definitely more of a counter striker, but man, Valentina's, head and shoulders better than everyone in that division. I see her running things in that division for a long time until she's ready for crack number 3 at Nunes. So I respect Chookagian. Matter of fact, a lot of people are shitting on Chookagian this week because allegedly she left her dog in some crate or something like that. So, a lot of people are might start betting Valentina by KO here soon. But I think that Valentina's going to win this fight, man. By decision or finish, well, probably most likely decision, but I wouldn't be shocked, man. Those body kicks, those high kicks are super hard. I mean, you heard the sound when that landed on Ai's forehead, man. I mean, that was scary. So, Chookagian, I ain't convinced, a nice, sweet little blonde girl like her is going to be able to take that. So, I'm going to say Valentina by 4th round finish.
Look, I respect Chookagian. She's definitely a winner. She wins a lot of fights. It's always fun to talk about the grunt and run, the tennis sounds, the whole bit. But to quote BJ Penn before the first Frankie Edgar fight, and, he says he, I'm going to say she can run around the ring all she wants, but sooner or later she's going to have to step up, and that's going to be when. So basically, she might be running around, but Valentina's going to cut off that ring, and when the time comes, it's going to be a devastating shot. So I actually will go with Valentina to finish the very elusive Katlyn Chookagian here. Main event of the evening for the light heavyweight title, we got the GOAT, Jon Bones Jones. He's 27-0, and Dominick Reyes is 12-0. Currently, they got Jon Bones Jones minus 450, and the comeback on Dominick Reyes is plus 360. Well, I'm just going to start out by saying Jon Jones is literally the most talented and well-rounded fighter I have ever seen in my life. His skill set, technicality, fight IQ, in-fight adjustments, creativity, and durability are absolutely off the charts. When you talk about artists, I mean, obviously you can look through his whole career to find innovative moments and moves, but how about his most recent fights in which he's been criticized for, Shaq? I say watch round 4 versus Anthony Lionheart Smith. Who else is out here faking flying knees and mid-air switching to flying side kicks to the knee? This guy is truly something else, and no matter what you throw at Jon Jones, he will keep moving forward the whole time. Who else walks down Thiago Maeda Santos on the feet for 5 straight rounds? No one. The only thing Jones doesn't have is one-punch KO power, but he makes up for it with crazy volume, a peppering style that really discourages his opponents and forces them to wilt under his pressure and presence. And like we mentioned earlier on in the intro, this guy, he's got a home gym, he's got the recovery stuff down, the own trainers. And when I talk about home gym, for other fighters, that might be a red flag. With Jon Jones, when I say home gym, I'm talking about a state-of-the-art gym where this guy's got red light therapy, this guy's got a hyperbaric chamber, he's got his own massage therapist, the whole bit. When I was alluding to earlier about how he's got his own coaches for everything, his own personal private jiu-jitsu coach who's a black belt world champion, his own Muay Thai coach who, is a respected crew over in Thailand. Crew is like what you call the professors there, the well-respected Muay Thai guys. Then he's got a boxing coach. Then he's got, he's got the game plan coach. He's got the whole bit to go with here.
Jones and Wink.
And, man, it's unbelievable to see what this guy has done. I mean, who else has been a champion for over a decade straight? It's unlike anything I've ever seen before, but the outside stuff that happened to him kind of makes people forget about this guy's greatness. But when you take all that stuff aside and you just put on a Jon Jones fight and you watch this guy, oh, my God, it's unlike anything I've ever seen before. And it's funny because fights that we've criticized in the past, like I remember when we watched the Anthony Smith fight live, it was kind of, since Anthony Smith had lost like 16 times, I was thinking, it's going to be a first-round finish. So when it wasn't a first-round finish live, I
actually said it was going to go 5 rounds.
Like live, I kind of thought, man, it wasn't the best. But then when I rewatched it recently, I was like, oh my God, this guy is such a virtuoso. I'm reminded every single time how good this guy is. And he loves beating guys at their own game. That's something really interesting he brings to the table. Now with Dom Reyes, what I like, or what he's got going for him here, is that he's probably going to be the only guy since Gustafsson the first time to match the height. And I say the first time because the second time Gustafsson was one fight away from retirement, so his heart wasn't into it. But the first time they fought, I mean, you remember, even though Jon clearly won that fight in my mind, at least Gustafsson went out there and gave him a real fight. That was the last 6'5" guy he fought, the first time. And now Dominick Reyes, he's got that going for him. He's a big boy. He's 6'5". He can move. He's got a nice little volume style. I like what he brings to the table, but speaking about the size, he's got a 7-inch reach disadvantage here against Jon Jones, and the mental warfare that these two have been playing, man, it really seems like right now, you don't always want to buy into this kind of stuff, but it really seems like right now, like Jones has a big mental advantage. I'm hearing Dom Reyes talk about how, Chris Weidman beat Anderson and I beat Chris, therefore it's like, dude, Anderson and Chris are a thing of the past. Like,
is that what he really said?
Yeah, he said Chris beat Anderson and I beat Chris. Therefore, it's like, dude, like what are you saying right now? Chris has been washed up for how long?
Was he laughing when he said it?
No, he was 100% serious. Like, Jones was even like, dude, is he really saying? And to quote BJ Penn again, did he really say this shit? So it's like, man, I'm really questioning Dom Reyes' mentality here. This is such a big moment for him, and I know he seems confident in all these things, but when it comes down to get under those lights, we saw the last big fight he had, and I know Chris Weidman was the last big fight he had, but I mean the last big fight he had against a real light heavyweight against Volkan. Now, I personally scored it for Dom Reyes, but man, that was a very close fight.
It was the mirror one.
Too close for comfort in the sense that I'm not sure how he's going to perform here against Jon Jones. I think the first round will be the scariest because Reyes does bring power. But, man, one thing about Reyes is his volume historically wanes. I mean, you look at that OSP fight, and he goes out there that first round. He's teeing off on him, but then the second and third round, he landed more in the first round than he did the second and third rounds combined. So I definitely think that his volume slows down, whereas Jon Jones gets better as the fights go on. So I think Jon Jones is going to pick this guy apart. He's going to take him down, and I think he's going to pound him out. I'm going with Jon Jones, and still the light heavyweight champion of the world. I think Dom Reyes is a very talented guy, and he'll be back, but it's first L time on Saturday, Shaq.
Yeah, I think Dom Reyes probably could have used one more fight after the Weidman fight, probably, against a Blachowicz or a Lionheart or something like that. And we didn't get to see it, man. Jon Jones shows him. Yeah, Jon Jones, I mean, what makes him so great is he's just got a variety of different techniques, man, that he can go to at any point in the fight. And they're just not typical techniques that you see, the oblique kicks, the shoulder bumps, the elbows from distance, man. Guys don't usually know how to react to that, and he he's just so smart on the fly. So Jon Jones is definitely an all-time great. Reyes, I've been very high on him. I like Reyes a lot. It just seems that, I I think he's got a bright future. I think he could potentially be a champion one day. It's just, man, I would have loved to see another dog fight. The Ozdemir fight, I thought he sucked it up and stole that second round from Ozdemir and dominated the third round. So I liked what I seen there. It's just, man, let me see it against Lionheart, let me see it against, just to see him in more spots. But maybe there's something we don't know. But yeah, you got to go with Jon Jones here. I think that, I will say this: he needs to be careful early, because I think Reyes is going to be very emotional on Saturday night, and I think he's going to come out, swinging very heavy early on. And Reyes is an athlete, former D1 football player, so he's definitely got the athletic tools to put Jon to sleep. It's just after that fight, man, after that first round, when that reality sets in and Jon Jones has dropped rounds in the past and come back to dominate guys. I mean, you look at the Maheda fight, which I personally scored 4-1 for Jon Jones. It just seemed that it seemed like a much more, I don't want to say one-sided fight, but it just seemed more like Jon was just controlling the action, which there's nothing wrong with controlling the action. You know what I'm saying? I think that he's definitely, he's obviously older, but the guy's just technical ability is just second to none. So I think he's probably going to win a 49-45 here, a lopsided decision in the late rounds. And Reyes will be back. But, man, a couple months back, I really liked Reyes, but it's just, man, if I could have just seen him fight a Blachowicz or a Lionheart or just one more dog fight to see how he really reacts in that flame, then I could have made a better decision here. But Jon Jones, man, he's top notch. He's a GOAT. So I gotta go Jon Jones by a lopsided decision.
And now we gotta hit up Kyle Marley for the Big Marley Minute. And joining us now on the Big Marley Minute is Big Marley himself. Kyle, it's going down this Saturday in H-Town. The GOAT, Jon Jones, defending his title against a very big and athletic opponent in Dominick Reyes. How's it going?
It's good, man. I always like Jon Jones fight weeks, and we got another $100,000 up top on DraftKings. It's the second time we've had that in the last month. So it's good to see the sport moving forward, at least, and getting these six-figure prizes. But yeah, I'm excited. We're starting this daily fan MMA radio this week. So it's just a good week all around, and hopefully a winning one as well.
Yeah, let's go ahead and tell the fans all about that. But before we do that, we got to let them know that Kyle Marley's bets are available at bestfightpicks.com this week. I know you got 2 plays ready to go, so they can get that at bestfightpicks.com. But for all our fans listening, Kyle Marley, myself, Brett Apley, and Sun Tzu, 2 of the most respected guys in fantasy MMA, man, we started a new thing now, a radio show on Patreon. It's only $1 for the first month. Go to patreon.com/MMA radio. And basically what we're going to be doing is it's going to be completely different than Half the Battle, Monday through Friday. It's going to be sports talk radio, but related to MMA. We're not going to be on there, giving you our picks and betting advice and this and that. It's going to honestly just be an entertainment-based radio show. And it's really awesome to get to talk about new things that we haven't done in the past, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. We just get to shoot the shit each week about MMA. I like talking to all you guys. I think it'll flow real nicely. And then we got some things going on with the listeners where they can get involved. Hopefully we can win them some money. But yeah, I'm excited to get it started. Go check it out. He gave you guys the link. First month, if you sign up, it's $1. And then after that, it goes up to $9.99. I think it's still well worth it if you break it down for 5 shows weekly. I'm looking forward to starting.
Man, it's going to be so awesome. Like you mentioned, getting the fans involved, whether it's a topic write-in or fan voicemail. We literally want the fans to be as involved as possible. And $1, look, I understand if you got to make that collect call, but if you don't spend that $1 on a candy bar. Go ahead and spend that $1 on 20 podcasts per month by guys like us. That's what we're going to do. Patreon.com/MMA radio. And Kyle, let's get right down to business, my man, because in the main event, you got the GOAT Jon Jones at 9,400. Dominick Reyes is 6,800. Now, I guarantee this is the first time you've ever seen a 6,800 next to Dominick Reyes' name. But that being said, he ain't fighting Chris Weidman anymore, Kyle.
Yeah, man, this is definitely his hardest matchup yet, and the price tag is deserved. I think Jon Jones is the better fighter everywhere in this fight, and he's one of my favorite plays of the week on DraftKings. my worry is that he goes out there and does what he did in his last fight with Santos and doesn't look for any takedowns and just wants to strike with Reyes and prove he's the better striker, because he only put up 60 DraftKings points against Santos, and that crushed my night on DraftKings when they fought. I don't want that to happen again here, but I do think he has a big ceiling. If he does look for takedowns, I think he can finish this fight with a submission or ground and pound finish. So I do like Jon Jones a lot here. I just won't be all in because of his last fight. I want to fade this fight in some lineups. I also don't think we have a 100-point floor here, so I don't want to stack it in cash either. So it's just going to be Jones in my cash game lineup. And then Reyes will be a guy I take like maybe 1-2 max shots on just because he has that knockout potential. I do think Reyes might be the second best in the division. He's right there anyways with the next crop of guys, but Jon Jones is in a tier to himself as the greatest in the division, the greatest that's ever fought in the sport. And hopefully he shows that again this weekend and doesn't go out there with a lackluster performance like he had against Santos.
So in the co-main event, you got Valentina Shevchenko taking on Katlyn Chookagian, and similar to Jon Jones, I mean, this isn't 9,400, Kyle. This is 9,500 for Valentina Shevchenko, and it's kind of been hit or miss with her on DraftKings, not in terms of going out there and getting the win, but in terms of going out there and scoring highly. Because you look at her fight with Jessica Eye, and I know for a fact whoever had that had the winning lineup, assuming your other 5 spots were good to go. But if you pick Valentina against Liz Carmouche, I take a wager you didn't have a similar result. So my question for you, Kyle, is are you looking to put Valentina in there, or are you kind of thinking that Katlyn might run away? It might be a frustrating fight.
Yeah, kind of the same deal. She only scored 65 points against Carmouche, and with Chookagian running around the cage the whole time, I could definitely see another 65, 75 point win from Shevchenko throughout 5 rounds. And it just depends on what Fight Metric wants to count as significant strikes as well. So I don't love Shevchenko here in GPPs. I think this is a good fight to fade, especially with this being a championship fight. Maybe she gets a little bit over-owned for that. But I think the best use of her is just in cash games. She's the safest win on the card with her minus 1,000 betting line. I'm fine throwing her in cash games and taking a close to guaranteed win, even if it is like 75 points. But in GPPs, we're going to need the highest scores, the highest possible score to get that $100,000 win. So that's what I'm going for, and I don't see her being on that lineup, especially when Jon Jones is cheaper. So I would much rather just go to Jon Jones, and I think this is a fight we can get away from.
Now let me ask you this, because obviously everything you said is very logical, but now let's say in the event that Valentina goes out there and knocks Katlyn Chookagian out, is there at all a possibility of having both Jones and Shevchenko in your lineups, or is that going to just muddy up the waters and prevent you from taking other winners?
I'm not against it if you can fit it, but I just think it's kind of hard to fit this week. There's not a whole lot of underdogs I love, so just paying for the highest 2 fighters, especially when they're champs and they might be over-owned, especially Jon Jones. He'll be super chalk, so I just don't think you're differentiating yourself from the field as much going with those two. Even though they are super popular, you're just going to have to take dives down low, and it's going to be hard for those guys to win. And even if you do, you're probably going to tie with other people as well. So I don't love that build this week, and I'm hoping that the public does so I can kind of get away from it.
Well, you said we need a big finish on our lineup, and I have a feeling, man, that this heavyweight fight between Juan Adams and Justin Tafa has the potential to produce just that. The question is, do you think the wrestling of Juan Adams will be the difference here, or you see Mark Hunt's protege, Justin Tafa, coming out here and knocking him out?
Yeah, I think Adams is the better fighter everywhere here, and he could dominate if he can get takedowns here. I think if he gets a takedown, he's probably going to finish with ground and pound. I think he's the better striker as well. Tafa's coming off a knockout loss only 4 months ago where his lights were completely shut out. Now these guys are big boys. It could definitely happen again. Maybe it's not even going to take the biggest punch this time. Maybe Adams could stiffen him up with a jab or something. But I do like him for the takedown ability. And he's only 8,800, so if he can go out there, get one takedown, and then finish with ground and pound, there's a decent shot he ends up on that 100K lineup. So I do like Adams here. Tafa, I would say, has more one-punch power of the two, so I'm not against using Tafa in a lineup or two, but my preferred play is definitely Adams, and he's a guy that I will for sure look to get into some DraftKings lineups this week. And I like him in all formats. I could definitely see 100-plus points from him.
So in the featherweight division, you got a matchup between Mirsad Bektic and Dan Ige, and Man, seems like a 50-50 fight on paper, but I have a feeling that one side will be very dominant, whichever way it plays out. Do you have a lean in this fight, or are you looking to get action on both?
I probably will have some lineups with both, but my preferred play is Bektic. I just think he's the better wrestler. Ige doesn't have great takedown defense, so I'm pretty sure Ige is going to land up on his back multiple times in this fight, and probably multiple times in the first round. Maybe Bektic can even get a ground and pound finish there and score really highly if that's the case. So I do want some Bektic lineups. And I like that they're priced in that mid range. So only $8,300. That's not too much. And Ige at $7,900. If he wins, he's probably going to pay that off. So I want a little bit of exposure to him as well. But I think he's kind of going to be a popular underdog this week. And I might go underweight to the field because I don't see him having a whole lot of success on the ground unless he can tire out Bektic. And most of his success will probably come on the feet. And I just don't see him scoring highly in that case unless he gets a knockout. So I'm probably going to be a bit overweight to Bektic and a bit underweight to Ige, but I will have some lineups with both guys.
Look, I mean, when both guys are on their game 100%, they can go out there and put up serious points. I mean, I know for a fact that Kyle Marley remembers that night that Mirsad Bektic went out there and destroyed Lucas Martinez. I heard that was a high score, wasn't it?
Let me check on that now. Martinez, 121, yeah. And he also scored 115 against Doan, 106 against Pepe. So he's got a big ceiling in him. It's just Ige is better than all of those guys. So it's kind of hard to see him racking up 100 plus here unless he does get the finish. But I do think he will go out there, get multiple takedowns, and I think that'll be enough for him to get 2 of the 3 rounds won and get his hand raised. So yeah, I'm going to prefer Bektic here. But I wouldn't hate it if you wanted to fade Bektic and go over the way to on Ige just because he is the better grappler. He's a better striker. He's a live dog here on a card where I don't like many underdogs.
And Kyle, last but not least, you got the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, fighting in H-Town once again. He's undefeated in Texas, taking on the sledgehammer Ilir Latifi. I have a feeling, like I usually do with heavyweight fights, these two are going to stand and bang until one man falls. Question is, who's going to fall?
I think Latifi is most likely to fall here. The issue is that Lewis just doesn't throw any volume, so we are purely relying on Latifi to fall. We need that knockout for Lewis to pay off his $9K price tag, and we need it early. If he gets a third-round knockout, he could score like 60, 70 points still, and at $9K, that's not going to get it done. And if he wins a decision, he might score under 50. He won the Ngannou fight. He had 40 points in a decision win, which is just ridiculous. So that's not a guy I really like paying $9K for. I do want a little bit of exposure to him because he could get that first round knockout. And if he scores more than like Shevchenko and people above him, then he's got a shot of being on that 100K lineup. So I will take a couple lineups with him. But Latifi's probably going to be a fade for me. I just don't see him scoring highly. Even if he does get the win here, it's probably going to be him holding Lewis against the cage, maybe landing a couple takedowns, but he's not a high volume guy either. So even at his cheap price tag, I don't think he's getting 10X. So he's just going to be a fade for me with my 10 to 20 lineups. But if I was making like 150, then I'm getting exposure to both sides of this fight.
Well, Kyle, that's why you are the DraftKings guy for Half the Battle. It's going down this Saturday in Houston, Texas. They can follow you at Big Marley 3. Your bets and your write-ups are available at bestfightpicks.com.
Yes, sir, man. I hope we all have a big week. Look forward to talking to you after the card on Daily Fan MMA Radio.
Yes, sir. We will speak soon, Kyle. Best of luck this weekend, and everybody go buy Kyle Marley's bets at bestfightpicks.com.
Yes, sir. Let's get it. Good luck.
Well, before we answer these fan questions, I want to let all the fans know to go to bestfightpicks.com and use that promo code 2020 to save 20% off our VIP bets. Bestfightpicks.com. Let's get it this weekend. And Shaq, let's answer these fan questions, man. So Jack Scott wants to know, what is your opinion on a DC versus Stipe trilogy fight, and who do you think takes it?
What is my opinion? Well, I think Stipe, I'll answer the second part. I think Stipe would take it, not counting Cormier out. Cormier is getting up there in age. My opinion on it is, man, I kind of agree. Stipe, look, I'm not against it. I mean, if they fight a third time, I'm down to see it 100%. It's just that from what I've been hearing from Stipe lately is that he wants to fight someone new. I feel like he's kind of hoping Rosenstrike can somehow, come in here and beat Francis so he could fight him or Blades. You know, I feel like that's more the direction he wants to go in. And I don't mean he's been heavyweight 2-time champ. I mean, and look, I understand why he doesn't want to fight Francis. Like, I wouldn't want to fight Francis either.
I beat him already.
I mean, look, he beat him 50-45. So, like, I get where the guy's coming from. Like, he's like, bro, I'm not fighting Francis again. Like, and that sucks for Francis. But Stipe can call the shots right now. And my opinion on this is I kind of agree with him. I kind of want to see something fresh. I kind of want to see something new. But if they did it, man, who wouldn't be down to see DC and Stipe fight?
Yeah, look, Jack, it would be a great fight. I think the reason Stipe's got a lot of hesitation, he says at least, is he took a lot of eye damage from DC. So I think he kind of doesn't want that anymore. But, man, if they make that fight, you know I'll be tuning in. Herman Martinez says, what are your top 3 online sportsbook for MMA and why? Much love as always. Much love to you, brother. We're not going to mention any names until one of these guys wants to put some money up to get their name mentioned on Half the Battle. But, you know, if you go to bestfightpicks.com and you click on our odds on the top right section, you'll definitely be led to some good ones, my man. Matthew Drucker says, is Juan Adams the biggest joke, pun intended, in the heavyweight division? We're going to find out Saturday night if that's the case or not, honestly, because if Tafa loses to him, then what does that make him, right?
I wouldn't say he's the biggest joke in the heavyweight division. I'd say that would probably be Todd Duffy or Jeff Hughes, Jarvis Danho. You know, that's one of those guys.
Manny wants to know, I think people are unfair to discredit Jon Jones of his greatness. What do you guys think? 100% agree, Manny. It's just, people try to make this too personal. They try to act, because he did some shit outside the cage, therefore let's discredit how amazing he is and how much of a virtuoso he is in the cage. But I've never seen a fighter better than Jon Jones, buddy.
I'll say what, I like that he's finally, when he first came in, the whole Jesus act I thought was a joke, you know what I'm saying? But I like how he's finally starting to be more of himself, so,
Mikey says, do you question Bektic's heart after a poor outing and basically giving up against Emmett? Bro, no, I don't think he gave up, man. I think he got knocked out. Emmett's one of the hardest hitters in the division.
I mean, have you seen what Emmett did to Ricardo Lamas? Did you see what he did to Michael Johnson? And matter of fact, go YouTube Josh Emmett versus Christos Giagos. I mean, Emmett's got an extensive history for putting dudes on ice skates. And he had a 10-7 round against the first 10-7 round in UFC history against Arantes. Featherweight history. So, Emmett, I don't think he pulled a stunt at all. I think Emmett's a hard hitter.
Yeah, I agree. The MMA Casual says, does Dan Ige have the EPO connection? I mean, the thing is, Ige's been criticized for his cardio in the past, so I don't think so.
But he always finds more in that third round. So maybe, does he have an EPO connection?
I'm going to say no. Yeah. Havenwood Jim says, do you like the idea of a fighter being unbeatable, Khabib or a Jones, or do you prefer the idea that everyone has at least one kryptonite opponent?
Yeah, more the latter. I think the longer you go, there's always, I can't think of anyone who's got out the sport undefeated.
Hickson.
Yeah. Come on. Just kidding. But nah. Khabib's the only guy that's him and John are the only undefeated guys. So it's about retiring at the right time and not coming back. That's really what it's about.
Yeah, I agree, man. If Khabib hangs it up right now or Jon Jones hangs
then
it up
he can say he's undefeated.
Hey, go out undefeated. But I don't think that for 90 to 95% of fighters, no, they're all going to take that L. But there could be an exception, like the Floyd Mayweather of MMA, which might be what Jones and Khabib really are. So I'm very curious to see if those two can retire undefeated or not. Charles Fogel says, "Is this Jones' last fight ever at 205?" Not in my opinion.
Not ever. But I think there's a chance he goes up to heavyweight after this.
Yeah, he might take a couple fights up, but I think that look, if he loses this fight, automatic rematch. But if he wins, he's mentioned himself he wants to fight Corey Anderson and Johnny Walker. So I still think
Johnny Walker is out the fucking question.
That's what Jones said he wanted. Yvonne wants to know, hey guys, do you think Bektic Ige would be fight of the night, or should we rather expect the bullet Shevchenko to head kick Chook's head into the 5th row?
No, I'm not expecting that one to get fight of the night. I'm thinking they might tie up a little bit in that fight. My fight of the night, I'm gonna say it's gonna be there's a couple of good ones. You got a couple Martinez and Ewell could be fight of the night. I just don't. I don't feel like that's the way Mirsad fights. I don't see Mirsad having the heart to be in a fight of the night where he went 15 and had a war with the guy. He's either gonna win clean or he's either gonna,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really looking forward to that fight, though, and a bullet head kick will definitely get her a performance bonus, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
Dominick Morono wants to know, McGregor, Ferguson, Gaethje, or the field? You have to pick one to possibly upset Khabib. Who and why?
Gaethje.
Yeah, I agree with Shaq just because Gaethje's got the D1 wrestling credentials, and also he's one of these guys that goes forward the entire time, doesn't really care what you throw at him, whereas McGregor might have a little bit, it's not suspect ground game, just suspect compared to Khabib, right? And then with Ferguson, he goes to his back and he gets rocked every single fight, so I think Gaethje has a better chance out of those three, but to actually pick someone to beat Khabib in this day and age seems like a tall order. I mean, you saw what he did to Dustin Poirier. You saw what he did to McGregor. You see what he does to all these guys. So, man, it's cool to see such a dominant champion, and I'm very curious to see what happens when he fights those three guys next. Mario says, what do you really think of Dom Reyes, and who wins, Usman or Masvidal? We'll tell you the Masvidal-Usman one when the time comes, but as far as Dom Reyes, man, he's a hell of an athlete. He's definitely developed into a good MMA fighter, well-rounded. I love his get-up game, the point fighting style, confident guy. So I think Dom Reyes is pretty damn good. But I think Jon Jones is pretty fucking phenomenal. Davis Farron says, do you think Ngannou is the man to stop Jon Jones? If not, who do you think is? Thank you, bro. Is Ngannou... Look, man, if Ngannou touches anybody on the chin, chances are it could be lights out. The only man that hasn't gone down when he got touched on the chin was Stipe, and I say that I know he lost to Black Beast, but he never threw at Black Beast, so that's why that happened. But it's just one of those things. Can Jon Jones just still be so tactical and just so strategic? He's just so amazing with his game plans. I fucking want to see that fight for sure, man. But would it surprise me if Ngannou slept anybody? No, but I definitely want to see that fight at some point before it's all said and done.
Yeah, I mean, if they fought at heavyweight, I definitely lean Ngannou. I think heavyweight's a different ball game, especially at that level. So that answers that. But, man, would Jon take that fight? I think at least for his first fight, he'd probably look to take something different.
Yeah, and I wouldn't blame him, man. Like, why would you want to fight for what? YOLO says, between Bautista and Johns, who do you think is more likely to be a future world champion?
I don't think either will be champion, but I think John's potentially could hit the rankings, possibly.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Shaq. I think Johns has more potential to be ranked, but future world champion, let's see how their careers progress before we talk about that. But I would say Johns has more chance to be ranked. 8-Ball Rocco says, Jon Jones has looked far from convincing in his recent outings. Is age the factor? I mean, bro, it's one of those things like we mentioned earlier. Like, okay, if you don't really got money on the line and you're expecting a first-round finish and that Lionheart fight and this and that, you might be like, man, what the fuck? But then when you actually go back and you watch it and you want to consider putting money on the guy, then you're reminded that, hey, he's still definitely got it. The guy's absolutely amazing. And just because he's not going out there and getting finishes against guys from, a couple generations ago, now he's beating the guys of today, I don't think you should criticize him for it personally, man. I think you got to give the guy a lot of credit. He's been a champion for over a decade. Yeah,
I mean, if you kind of go back to some of the breakdowns for those fights, I kind of had a feel. Lionheart, look, I know Lionheart's got, a bunch of losses, but Lionheart, man, if you hear Lionheart talk, man, his mindset, Lionheart he's a tough, at least in this day's age, maybe 10 years ago you could knock him out easily, but right now to beat Lionheart he finished Gustafsson in Sweden, so Lionheart deserves a lot of respect, and even going into the Maheda fight, I felt like there's a little bit of value on Maheda, not saying he's going to win, but Maheda at 205, that Blachowicz fight was very impressive. I was like, man, Maheda's got I don't know how he's going to come back after this extensive knee surgery, but, I liked what I was seeing from him, at least in comparison to his 85 days. So it didn't shock me that fight played out closer than the line indicated. I actually said both those guys would go the 5 rounds. And, Jon Jones, I think, everyone was off that Gustafsson fight where he smashed him. But Gustafsson, guys, if y'all are still considering Gustafsson a top-notch 205er, y'all are a little late.
Thank you so much to all our fans for all the questions. We really love you guys. Thank you for all your support always. It means the world to us. Well, Shaq. And we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So what is the fight to watch for UFC 247?
My fight to watch is going to be Derrick Lewis versus Ilir Latifi. You got Derrick Lewis in his hometown, H-Town, swinging and banging against Ilir Latifi, who, he's under the impression that he can come up to heavyweight and be the top 5 guy. So, I'm very interested to see that fight. All due to respect to Ilir Latifi, but I want to see if Black Beast has that great moment in his hometown. He can, he helped the city out when it was flooding. I just want to see Black Beast have that good moment down there in Houston.
Yeah, for me, my fight to watch is actually early on the prelims between Andrea Ewell and Jonathan Martinez. I just have a really hard time seeing this fight being boring with both of their styles, the way they match up. I don't think anybody's going to be humping legs. I think these two are going to stand and bang and give a really good account of themselves. So Ewell versus Martinez is definitely one of my fights to watch. Well, Shaq, who is your fighter to watch for UFC 247?
My fighter to watch is going to be Juan Adams, surprisingly, just because, look, if this guy comes out here and gets knocked out in the first round, the chances that they cut the heavyweights probably are slim. But the fact that, I just want to see what happens, man. This guy, he says he's a new man. He said he's got a new stance, a new team, new city. So we'll see how he looks. I'm really interested to see. A lot of people are laying that -2 on 2 and some change on him. They think it's an easy fight for him. I want to see it. I want to see him come out here and finish something in the first round, man. So the kid sounds like he might be in a little bit of a better headspace. But if he doesn't win this fight, man, that would have been, from what everyone thought he was off Contender Series, you could almost put him in a category as one of the biggest fraud heavyweights to hit the sport if he loses.
And my fighter to watch is Mirsad Bektic. Look, this is a guy who had so many expectations, so much hype when he first came into the UFC, and to an extent, he lived up to it, but not to the full extent that everyone wanted. People were saying future champion, future this, future that.
You remember when he was scheduled to fight Max Holloway and was over a 3-1 favorite?
Yeah, I was actually about to bring that up. This is a guy who was scheduled to fight Max Holloway at one point, and man, people have thought very highly of him, but he's had some head-scratching losses, namely the Darren Elkins one. So, man, the kid looks like his mindset's on point. He looks like he's fixed a couple things. Shows up there to the face-off with his shirt off during the media day, and not that means he's gonna win, but it's just last person I saw do that was Kamaru, and you saw how he came out against Colby, man. So I think win or lose, Bektic is very motivated for this fight, and I can't wait to see how he performs. So for that reason, Mirsad Bektic is my fighter to watch. Well, Shaq, we did it. It's going down this Saturday in Houston, Texas, in H-Town. Jon Jones versus Dominick Reyes. They can follow you at MMA Genius 05 on Twitter. They can follow you at ShaqBFP on Instagram. They can follow me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter. You can get our plays at bestfightpicks.com. Use that promo code 2020 to save 20% off our VIP. Or if you want to hit us up individually, use my promo code Dan for 10% off, or use Shaq's promo code Shaq for 10% off at bestfightpicks.com. Looking to keep the streak up. And we just want to thank all our fans for all your support. Make sure you subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, and all the places where we are available. We want to thank you guys once again. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.